Welcome to a new Webflow tutorial here on this Formbook channel. Today, for the first time, we are building a scroll animation using the new GSAP Animation UI in Webflow. And I'm super pumped to roll this out for you. And today, we're gonna build a scroll animation because I think that's where the new horizontal timeline feature really shines. And first of all, thanks to WebBay and Webflow for giving me early access here to this amazing tool. And I've got a lot planned here on this channel, and more animation tutorials will be going live. So if you don't want to miss that, feel free to subscribe to the channel. I have to say, they have really built something cool here. The entire animation system is quite a beast, and even if you already know the old Webflow interactions, I must say there is still a learning curve because there are so many more settings. I will be diving into all of that in the coming days and weeks. I've prepared a bit of a setup here in Figma, and with AI I generated two images. One is with lighting and one is without, and that way we can fake the glow while the stripes are scrolling through. I had actually planned to make the stripes grow then to the left and the text is coming from the right or something, but that didn't end up happening. It was just an idea. Still, I think the result we are building today is quite impressive. In Webflow, I've wrapped the whole thing in a sticky wrapper. It's 100 VH, which means it's exactly as tall as the viewport. And around that, we have a scroll size div. It's set up so that you have to scroll 6 times the height of the viewport. I now use the scroll section here as my interaction trigger, and at the bottom I can switch to the new GSAP UI. And here you will find many familiar options to choose from. I did miss the when scroll into view trigger, but they've actually included that here in the scroll animation. And in our case, we definitely want to create a scroll animation now, and I choose custom here, and that brings me right into the first action step. But let's go one step back, because this part was a bit confusing for me in the beginning, because the scroll trigger settings are here and easy to miss. So once you open it, you first see settings like when exactly should the scroll animation start, and you can also enter percentage values if you want to add some distance. And those indicators showing you where the animation will start or end. And down here in the controls, you can see that you can also switch to the trigger actions. And that means that once this point at the top is reached, it just plays something from the timeline. And I think that is basically the counterpart to when scroll into view. But for our animation, we use the regular scrub on scroll option, so it plays while scrolling. Next are the actions, and that's essentially what you also see below here. And if it's set to custom as a default, but you should definitely rename it so you can keep track once there are multiple elements. And you see that by default, it is set to the same as trigger. And unfortunately, it is always set like that, and that's annoying because we usually do not want to animate the section itself, but rather a class or element inside. And currently, there is no way, at least not yet, to directly target a class from the navigator. So right now, we need to manually type in the glow stripe class, and I know that the first one has the combo class S1, but they actually don't suggest it yet, but I assume they will fix that. And now the element is linked correctly. And besides classes, you can also animate attributes, which is super powerful, and it makes it more independent from styling in Webflow. But in this project, we use the standard class. And then we can choose here the type option. So should it animate from a state where it is right now to a new setting, or we can toggle this off and then basically insert a standard. And this is a bit like the initial state in the old animation tool. And we can now set up a move in the Y direction to push the stripe down completely out of the viewport. And in our case, we start at 100%. And from there, we actually don't want to go to the 0. We want to push it all the way to the top and out of the viewport. So we type in -100%. And now you see, even though we type in that value, the element is still down here. And that's because the timeline is currently here. And only when I move the timeline to the end, I do actually see the element disappears at the top. So that's also a bit of a difference to the old animation UI. And now we want to animate the second stripe, and therefore I think it's best to duplicate just the action element here in the timeline, and then rename this one to stripe 2 and set up the combo class is 2 for this element. And now you start to see where this timeline becomes truly useful. For instance, you want to tweak how many milliseconds are in between those two elements. And that is now much quicker here than constantly changing values in the input field. Another thing that was a bit confusing to me in the beginning is that right now you see that the timeline ends right here and there's an indicator. That means that when I scroll from the top, the whole thing animates slowly until the 600 VH height is passed. So the scroll end is wherever the last animation ends. I can, of course, just move the stripe 2 more to the right or to the center, and then the scroll end indicator here is also going there. That makes it a bit difficult to get the timing right, because in our case the stripes should only animate in the beginning and not until the end. But as we add more action steps, also the scroll end indicator is going more or shifting more to the right. But I could also imagine to work with a placeholder here. Let's move on and create the third stripe. And this has the isCombo class is free. And as you can see, the stripe is only half as tall, not the full height. So I need a higher Y value to move it out. For better visibility, let's also hide the text element in the background via the visibility settings. And then we want another custom action step, which is the image with glow animation. And this one we can also type in opacity of 0, because that's where it should start, and then go fully visible to 100%. And you notice that it's now animating the whole section scroll and not only the scroll image here, even though I selected this one and then created a new action step. So I think it's better to use the selected element as a default class name. So in this case, we insert the scroll image and isGlow-Combo class. So choosing the target element should definitely be improved. That should work faster. You can also see that the duration here is just 0.25 seconds. That seems very fast, but since this is a scroll animation, it doesn't matter much unless you were playing it just once here. It's also possible here in the timeline, and then the timing setting would matter more. But in our case, it should quickly fade in, so we can make this one a bit shorter here. I've now added the fourth stripe and tweaked the timing as well. And once the glowing image is fully visible, the stripes are moving out of the viewport. So we want to also change the opacity from the glow image again down to be 0. So we duplicate this action element, then move it to the right. We can leave the class name as it is, but change the description here. So maybe type in image with glow and then fade out. And to make it more clear, we maybe could also change the other one to fade in. But I definitely have to figure out a better structure or naming convention here for those type of action steps. And now I place, or I set the scroll image here from opacity 100 to go back to 0, then place it after the other image. And now you see it scrolls away too quickly, and it's a little bit hard to see that it's fading out. So we need to tweak the trigger settings, and we want the timeline to end exactly when the end of the trigger comes into the view. And that makes more sense here in this animation. And that way we can fully see our scroll animation until the end. And then it scrolls away. And when we look at the scroll animation now, the person looks a bit static. We could improve this a bit to move or scale the person as well. So I duplicate this one again to target another element. And then we type in our scroll image wrapper element. And then we scale it from 1.2 to 1 and also move it in the y-axis by 1% to avoid any flickering here at the bottom of the image. And if you want to animate other properties, you could also click the plus sign here and have more options, including the class operations, which is pretty new and pretty cool. Because in this case, you can set or add a new class to an existing element and then animate it via CSS animations, which can be really useful. And before the text is coming in, we basically want to fade out all the images or the image wrapper completely, and therefore I duplicate this again and just insert an opacity from 100 to 0. And now we can insert or animate the two text elements. So they are wrapped here inside the glow text wrapper, and I duplicate this element and then change the target class to glow text and is title. This is our combo class. Then we just fade them in, and we cannot see them yet because we have to toggle the visibility settings back to on. And when we now go back to the scroll interaction, you see that it zooms out quite a bit, and that's like a default state. And I constantly had to zoom back in, which got a bit annoying. But let's check when the fade in starts, and that works pretty well here. It could be a little earlier. And then we can duplicate this one again and offset it slightly. And then I switch just the combo class to is copy. And what definitely also doesn't work, like in the old interactions, is selecting two elements and then applying changes at once, even though they both have the same action, changing just the opacity. So that's maybe also another difference for now. Otherwise, you can go to the preview, activate the enable custom code and test everything here. And of course, you can also publish it to the live domain. If you want to dive deeper into Webflow, check out my new Webflow expert course. All videos are now finished and are newly recorded this year, and it is a course for advanced users who want to learn new techniques in Webflow.